Good evening and welcome to MetroFocus. I'm Rafael Pi Roman. Leadership. Throughout the course of the coronavirus pandemic, we've seen the best and the worst from our elected officials as they grapple with the crisis of our lifetime. And as we head towards a presidential election that many consider the most consequential in recent American history, it bears asking, what are the qualities that make the best leaders in times of crisis? And what kind of leadership is it going to take to ultimately bring this country together? Joining us now to help answer these and other questions is Steve Adubato, host of One-on-One with Steve Adubato, author of the forthcoming book, Lessons in Leadership Innovation in an Age of COVID-19, and of course, a MetroFocus contributor. Steve, welcome back to the program.
Good to be with you, Raf. It's such an important topic.
So Steve, I want to get into the leadership qualities of the two men running for president, as well as of the leaders of our respective states, Governor Cuomo and Governor Murphy. But before we get into that, I wonder if you could tell us what you think are the fundamental qualities that any leader needs to have at any time.
Think about it, write about it, struggle with it, try to be that kind of leader every day and fall a little bit short. Strong communicator, credible communicator. He or she, what they say is not just what they believe, but it's factual. Being willing to tell people a truth that is a hard truth to hear, but must be told for people to protect themselves and make the best decisions possible. Someone who's got charisma, someone who has passion and enthusiasm, someone who has integrity and character and thinks of those around them more than he or she thinks about what's best for me. Those are the basic traits of leader, in addition to, in a crisis, being incredibly creative and innovative and willing to not just change, but embrace change and innovation, because the status quo is never an option in a crisis for a leader.
Well, let's talk about President Trump. How does he stack up to those qualities you just talked about?
Raf, I really do try to separate the politics from the leadership part. And when I was writing Lessons in Leadership, my first book on leadership 5 years ago, I didn't think he was going to be elected president, but I analyzed them. And at the time, I said, if you're name calling, this was then, 5 years ago, if you're calling people names, you're mocking people's physical appearance, if you are degrading women, if you are doing those kinds of things, and then frankly being less than honest about what you know to be true, those aren't great traits for a leader. Then he gets elected, and I have to tell you, those traits only get exacerbated in a crisis. Calling people names, mocking those who disagree with them, getting rid of people in the cabinet as soon as they're not with you on something, when in fact you need those experts, be they generals or the Dr. Fauci's of the world. You need that expertise. Bringing people together in this pandemic, real close together, not masked. It's a poor, leaders have to be role models, not just for the country, but frankly for how they should act, and others should emulate that. And I don't believe the president has been really strong in that, and ultimately being less than honest. What he told Bob Woodward on tape was not what he said to the American people. Those are not great leadership traits in a crisis like this.
Well, Scott Adams, the guy who created the Dilbert cartoon, he's kind of like a political pundit now. He said something interesting. He more or less agreed with you in the sense that President Trump is missing some of these typical qualities of a president, of a leader. But he said that Trump has something others have not had recently, which is the ability to achieve success, particularly in those areas where almost all the experts said it was impossible, or that it would be a disaster if he accomplished what he tried to accomplish. As an example, his successes in the Middle East, his renegotiation of NAFTA, his passing criminal justice reform bill, just to give you some examples. Aren't those leadership qualities as well?
Raf, yes, there have been things that have been accomplished. You do not take that away from the president. But leadership is like this. There's no perfect leader, but when you balance it, put it this way. If you say, I want to do away with the Affordable Care Act, and he's pressed, and they say, well, millions of people will be off the insurance, and those who have pre-existing conditions won't get covered. We're going to take care of that. But where's the plan? It's coming. Well, the election's in a couple of days as we do this. My point is, Raf, you can accomplish all those other things, but also be blind to such critical issues like healthcare at a time of a horrific global pandemic. And so I argue that President Trump's leadership is going to largely, beyond the accomplishments you raised, which are accurate, will be measured by his performance around COVID-19. Everything else will pale in comparison.
Okay, let's turn to Vice President Biden. He's been in political life for nearly half a century. And of
Yep.
course, he's the Democratic candidate for president. Could you assess as quickly as you can his leadership abilities throughout his political life and through this campaign?
Well, up to him being the vice president for President Obama, I was not overly impressed with his Senate career. It was shaky at best, ran for president several times, but as a leader, he wasn't known to be someone who accomplished a great deal in the US Senate. Legislative versus executive position, I get it. But he was a good soldier to the leader of the country, Barack Obama, but as a candidate, not particularly inspiring, bunkering down a lot, hunkering down a lot, but being very disciplined, Raf. When you think about it, he has been told, don't give a Joe Biden speech where you're all over the place. So he's been, what I like to say, is within the goalpost. He communicates in a disciplined, concise fashion, which for him is not easy. And I'll tell you what else, Raf. People see in him, I don't know how many, because I don't know how the election's going to go, stability. And even if he's not inspiring crowds the way Trump does, they see stability, and then he'll rely on the scientists and the generals and others to make tough decisions. Even though he'll own the decision, leaders have to rely on smarter people than them in certain areas. And that's what I think a significant number of people see in Joe Biden.
You know, one of the leadership qualities that you didn't mention today, but that you've written about before, is the ability to stay connected with the leader's stakeholders. In this case, the stakeholders are the voters. Do you think that Vice President Biden has been as connected to the voters as he could have or should have? You know, that's the knock on him. You said bunker down. That's what they say, not just the president and Republicans, that he's bunkered down too much, too far away from the stakeholders.
I think it's fair, Raf. I do. And I will say this. I do try to separate the leadership discussion from politics, but sometimes it's very difficult. The politics of this are such that Vice President Biden can be low-key, can be in his basement, if you will, doesn't have to make that many speeches, because much of the political decision will be based on a referendum of President Trump's leadership around COVID. If COVID were not the case, or our reality, I think Joe Biden would have a very tough time, because he'd have to connect with voters in person, large crowds, and more debates. I think he's challenged in that situation because President Trump, as aggressive, and I argue, particularly in the first debate, overly aggressive, not a great trait for a leader. Somewhat, his demeanor was off. Biden caught a break because of this horrific pandemic, in my view, because you don't have to be the kind of public leader as a candidate that he would normally have to be.
All right. Well, let's turn to Governor Cuomo. You know, like most of the leaders in this country and around the world, he was late in recognizing the gravity of COVID. But once he did recognize it, almost everyone agrees that he exhibited great leadership qualities, right? That he was candid. He told the truth. That he was serene. He didn't frighten people. That he was transparent. That he deferred to the experts when he needed to. All the qualities you've mentioned. Then came March 25th and the decision to put recovering COVID patients in nursing homes. As you know, thousands of nursing home patients died. Some people say that a lot of them, if not most of them, died as a result of this decision. But since then, the governor has not exhibited those leadership qualities, most people say. He has not been candid about this. He has not been transparent. And he has not been empathetic towards the families of the victims. Do you think that's a correct assessment? And how do you explain it?
You know, Raf, on the issue of empathy, again, I try to have enough empathy to know that I can't empathize with someone who is facing, my sister has had a serious, very serious case of COVID and has gone public with it. But that's my sister, my baby sister. There are people who've lost loved ones over this. And so I believe a lot of those people feel that Governor Cuomo hasn't shown enough. But I'll say this, what he has been, in my view, which is a bit similar to President Trump, sounds odd, is he's a bit thin-skinned. And I don't believe that he has owned the mistakes around that decision regarding nursing homes. There's a great book called Extreme Ownership written by two Navy SEALs who say, no matter what happens on your watch, own it. I do not believe that Governor Cuomo is owning that. And that's a problem, because that's a decision that ultimately was made by the executive leader of New York State. And in New Jersey, we'll talk about that in a minute with Governor Murphy. But I don't think he's been strong on that. And I think he's been so thin-skinned that when he is criticized, he becomes even less transparent and open.
All right, let's talk about Governor Murphy because he did the same thing. He put recovering COVID patients in nursing homes. What were the effects of that quickly, and how did he respond
It
to
was
the
not
fallout?
good. Sorry for interrupting, Ralph. It was not good. And I asked Governor Murphy this in a one-on-one interview. And I said, Governor, how much do you own? And he said, look, we didn't know. We didn't know how bad it was. We didn't know what we needed to know. And I have to tell you, as much as I respect Governor Murphy's leadership overall in COVID, in the COVID-19 case, I do not believe on this. I believe he's been more similar, a lot more similar to Governor Cuomo. He hasn't owned it, in my view. He puts it on the nursing homes themselves. They were not transparent. The state made those decisions through the Department of Health where to put people. And he has to own that because the Department of Health reports to him. Overall, solid leader. In that case, not so great.
So you say overall he has been good.
Yeah, because you know what, Raf, more than anything else, he's been willing to make tough decisions about closing certain things down when there's great protest around him and people say, we hate you for this. Different industries, the gym industry, the restaurant industry. I don't know what's right or not, but I'll tell you what, he's not playing to the crowd, and that's a strong leadership trait.
All right, Steve, I want to end with this. It's kind of personal. I hope you don't mind. Less than 2 weeks ago, your father, Steve Adubato Sr., passed away. Most New Jerseyans know that he was an active and powerful political and community leader. He touched the lives of thousands in a positive way. Most of those lives were working class people of all nationalities and all colors. I wonder how much your interest and your thinking about leadership was inspired by his example.
Well, first of all, you and I had so many interviews and conversations with my father, and I saw how much he was drawn to you. I was like, I don't have a brother, but Raf's my brother that apparently my father likes more. And I say that to you jokingly, but he'd always say, God, that Raf's so nice. Why aren't you as nice to me? But the truth is, I did learn a lot about leadership from my father. And in all candor, and I wrote this in Lessons in Leadership, what to do in terms of inspiring, motivating, standing up. He stood up in 1970 to support an African-American mayor running for the city of Newark against the white candidate, was ridiculed by our Italian-American neighborhood, but believed it was the right thing to do. He had courage. But, and I tried, I'm only this much of courage compared to my father, but I'll say this, I also saw him run meetings where he would ridicule people and be in their face, and you're laughing because you've seen it, Raf, you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
So he would rule with an iron fist, and I talked to him about the velvet glove, and he said, there is no velvet glove in my leadership. And the reality is he got things done. They built a charter school, the Robert Treat Academy, one of the best in the nation, but there was some roadkill in the process. And I learned a lot about leadership, what to do and what not to do for my dad.
All right, we're going to have to end it there. He was a great man and a good man. Thank you so much, Steve. It's always a pleasure to talk to you.
My honor, Raf.